What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are doing part 2 of the embargo information. In my original video, I did talking about the top of the patch notes for the reworks for the Ravagers. Also did a touch up on the kits for the Uncanny X-Men. And in the second video here, basically going to talk about these stats with the Ravagers and how they're just... there's some interesting stuff here. Like, you can see here, like, for comparison, like, Ravager Stitcher has the same health as Silver Surfer now. And, like... Like, okay, so basically your Ravagers are getting some hefty reworks, and there's a couple things here. Number one, over here on the right, all these values are pulled from MSF.gg, cannot be guaranteed, especially stuff with T'Challa. We had to basically use the embargo footage and kind of backwards engineer the stats that we got from him in that video and figure out the bonuses from ISO and use that to pretty much figure out how this character... There we go. Yeah, there we go. Basically figure out what his actual stats were going to be. And what we're doing here is we're talking about before and after, where they ranked before and after, and talk about where they are similar to other characters now with these reworks. So if you guys do find this video helpful, you do enjoy it, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're getting close to 5,900 subscribers, getting close to 6,000. Do appreciate the subscriptions. Does help to drive YouTube to promote the channel. So always greatly appreciated. But yeah, as you can see, these stats before the rework were hot garbage. Like, look at this. Tied for 166 resistance in terms of Ravager Bruiser, and that's the same for Ravager Stitcher and Ravager Boomer as well. Keep in mind, there's only 184 characters in the game currently. There will be more once the patch goes live. It'll be like another 5 or... It'll be another 4, 5. I can't do math. There'll be another 5. So there'll be 189 total characters, and pretty much all their stats are going to be better than what you saw here in the previous stats. So these characters are all hot garbage, and it's really funny if you go and look at the rankings on MSF.gg, and you do go and look at, let's go by the resistance. So if you go down here to the very bottom where there's the Ravagers, I mean, you can see who some of these other characters are, like Hand Blade Master, Kree Royal Guard, Aim Monstrosity, Hand Sentry, Kree Reaper. There's some really bad characters down here. Same thing, you have like Luke Cage, but he gets a huge boost due to Heroes for Hire. Also down here at the very bottom, Winter Soldier, Thor, Aim Assaulter. So not good company when you're talking about like some of the worst characters in terms of resistance. That's really, really bad. So I thought that was really funny when I was looking through. I was kind of curious to see who was ranked around them at the time. And yeah, I was surprised to see who's down there. I mean, hey, look, there's Thanos, but Thanos is part of Black Order, and Black Order's miles better than anything you see down here. There's Symbiote Spider-Man and Colleen Wing, but again, Colleen Wing gets a huge boost to her resistance stat because of the Heroes for Hire and the way Charged works. So that is something that I thought was really, really interesting. And then you see the boosts here. So let's start with Ravager Bruiser. His health, damage, armor, and focus and resistance all got pretty significant buffs. Focus got a massive boost, almost double the boost on focus. And, you know, that's kind of important because he is stealing abilities through his basic and through his special. You do need to make sure he is able to steal those effects. So, you know, you need a nice boost to focus here. And they did do that, thankfully. That was the biggest glaring stat for him. And that was a concern we had in our Zoom call. What someone brought up was how reliably would Bruiser be stealing? So he's 63rd best focus now in the game, very close to Yo-Yo in terms of focus. You see a couple other characters have Yo-Yo, like you can see Ravager Stitcher also has very similar focus with Ravager Bruiser here compared to Yo-Yo. So very good focus stats, at least much better. Now I wouldn't say very good, but definitely above average, and that's going to be very helpful here for making sure he can steal those buffs. And if you're uncomfortable with that focus, if you think that's not enough, you may want to throw Skirmisher on him. I am considering it, just because I want to make sure he can steal those buffs. Like the amount of buffs he steals and like placing the disrupt and defense down on protectors, that's huge. Like when you're going against mercenaries, you want to make sure that defense down disrupt lands on the Merc Riot Guard. Like that's very important. That can really screw things up. And like for Black Order, when you saw that fight, like getting defense down and disrupted on Cole Obsidian's great. Also, if you can do it on Thanos, even better. So yeah, that one's very, very important. So yeah, that focus boost, if you don't like it, if you think you may need to go for more, I think Skirmisher ISO would be fine with that. I'm not going to argue against Skirmisher ISO for Ravager Bruiser because of those debuffs. Healer is also going to work fine on him, I think, because he does have a self-heal. Very important. But anyways, health. 49th best health in the game, very similar to Misty. That's pretty good company. Tied for 62nd in terms of damage with Nebula. Now, one other thing too, these stats, they have the yellow bars around them. These will be buffed in War. You can see that down here, talking about how they gain stats. For example, all Ravagers gain 25% more health in War. Other than Bruiser, all other Ravagers gain 25% armor in War. And then outside of T'Challa, other Ravagers gain 30% damage in War. The reason I don't include Bruiser and T'Challa is because that's part of their passive, so it's automatically going to be calculated in. Yeah, so looking at Ravager Bruiser, I need to actually go back and recalculate his armor. So that armor is actually lower than it should be. So that armor for Bruiser is actually going to get better. Meaning that if I, say, pull up a calculator here. Let's see, his armor is at... Okay, so 19,524. And we're going to give that a 25% increase. I forgot to. I forgot that his passive is not updated yet. So that passive is actually going to give him even more armor. It's going to give him 24,000 armor. And if you go and look at that on the stat table, we don't need the calculator anymore. So 25,000 armor would actually put him up here, close to characters like Deathpool, Maria Hill, Cloak, Shield Assault. So it's much better in terms of rankings. That's just outside the top 20. If I can pull this over just a little bit, there you go. That's where he is in terms of armor then at that point. So that's pretty good armor for him. That's even better. So almost top 20 in terms of armor. Not bad at all. But yeah, moving on from that, Yo-Yo, and we already talked about the focus here. Resistance is 102nd. He's got a little bit better in terms of resistance. He doesn't get a boost to that inside War. But, I mean, I'm not expecting a massive buff to Ravagers. Like, I know that they're not trying to make them a meta war team, like top-tier war team. They're going to make them better against teams like Mercs and Black Order, you know, not your A tier, but like your mid-tier, upper tier, somewhere around there. That's where Ravagers is going to be countering. So you don't need to take their stats and jack them way up. This is the kind of rework that you do when you want them to make them usable and actually solid, and that's what we're getting here. So 102nd in terms of resistance for Ravager Bruiser, below average, but considering he was 166th before, he's moved up 60 places. I'll take it. Next up, talk about Ravager Stitcher, 20th best health in the game, similar to Surfer, which is huge, similar damage to Bullseye, and similar armor to Shang-Chi. And remember, all these are going to get buffed in War as well, so they're going to be even better stats in there. And that health stat for Ravager Stitcher is huge because there's a heal based off of his max health. 10% of his max health, it heals twice. So the more health you have here on Stitcher, the better off that's going to be. Healer ISO, I think, is obviously going to be the way to go with Ravager Stitcher. Then his focus is similar to Yo-Yo, and his resistance is similar to Cole Obsidian. You know, finding these names and seeing how they're ranked, that's pretty good. I'll take that. Now moving on, Ravager Boomer. Ravager Boomer is very much a glass cannon type character, and they have not changed that. Lowish health, tied for 89th with long shot, very much glass cannon on this. Low health, below average on health, which is to be expected. Or actually, I believe that's like just at average. That's like 50th percentile. So about middle of the pack in terms of health. Damage is 34th, similar to Cyclops. Cyclops did not get a buff in his health with the Uncanny X-Men rework. And here you go. Very similar health, or very similar damage there. You can see over there with T'Challa, we're going to talk about his damage when we get to it because, oh boy, that's some big damage. Armor, 72nd in the game compared to Hela. Not a buff at all to armor, which is fine. Like, he didn't really need armor. He's above average with the armor, which is fine. That's really all you needed. Focus. This is important. So I'm going to be putting Skirmisher ISO on Ravager Boomer. And I think that's the easy way to go. His passive is getting reworked. He always assists on non-minion Ravager allies, means he's always assisting on T'Challa and Yondu. I'll probably be putting Striker on both of them, combined with a Skirmisher here. It's going to be big. So I think Skirmisher is the best way to go, and that means naturally his focus is going to go up, which is fine. You're not really worried about him for stealing damage or stealing buffs. You got plenty of other Ravagers who are going to be doing that, so you don't need to really worry about that here with his focus. So, but just because the Skirmisher Striker combo, I think Skirmisher is best to go for on Boomer. We'll do testing on just to see. And then resistance, got a slight buff in resistance. Again, he's a glass cannon, so not a lot of health, armor, or resistance. Very high damage, moderate focus, but again, not a big deal for him, but very squishy in terms of resistance as well, similar to Ms. Marvel on that resistance. And I did mention it, very similar to Polaris on his focus. So not bad. Yondu. This is you're seeing some very, very good names there, like that damage and the focus and resistance, and that's just because of how I hate how I had this all like formatted perfectly, and then I drop it over in a Google Drive, and it just messes up the formatting again. Anyways, Yondu, his health will be 109th in the game. Got a slight buff to health. Again, he's like a glass cannon. He's gonna be a lot like Ravager Boomer. Yondu's gonna be a bit of a glass cannon as well, but he does have some things to help him too. When he summons Ravagers, he does gain stealth, so he cannot be directly targeted, which is nice. But yeah, that health and armor is gonna make him very squishy. 109th in the game in terms of health, which is similar to Hela, and 149th in armor, which is very similar to Gamora. Very, very low health and armor stats. Yeah, and there's nothing else to say there. I mean, I forgot how little armor Gamora has. She does get some. She does get buffed, I believe, and she does get the defense up and everything. But still, that's very low armor, and that health is nothing to be proud of either. Yeah. But in terms of that damage, though, that damage is huge. 35th best damage in the game, similar to Cersei, which I think is, when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, like I did not expect him to have damage similar to an Eternal. And I mean, T'Challa has damage similar to another Eternal, but that's a very good damage stat. Also, keep in mind, all of Yondu's damage is piercing. So his ultimate and his basic both deal piercing damage, so that damage gets even better. Does get a 30% boost of it in War with the passive on T'Challa. So there you go. That's gonna deal some serious damage, and it's gonna be good. Now, also his focus, 47th best in the game. Do not worry about putting Skirmisher on Yondu, because he gains a ton of bonus focus with his passive, and his ultimate gains 100% boosted focus, 100% bonus focus for each Ravager on the field. So there's going to be 4 Ravager allies automatically, plus 2 other summons if they survive that long. You're talking a 600% boost in focus on his ultimate that steals all those buffs. Yeah, you're not going to need to worry about this. He also gains 20% per non-summon Ravager ally, so he gets another 80% boost to his focus in War. So yeah, like really, Skirmisher on Yondu is really not going to be a problem, I think. I think you're going to be fine going for Striker on him. The bonus ISO attack for him should be stealing positive effects with that ISO attack. We'll see. And then Resistance, 83rd, similar to Sharon Carter, Secret Avenger, a pretty meta character for raids, but that Resistance is nothing to sneeze at either. That's some solid Resistance too. So, yeah, Yondu is very much a glass cannon like Ravager Boomer, but that damage and that focus stat both are very, very nice. I cannot complain with them. And speaking of glass cannons, let's talk T'Challa. So, 129th health in the game, similar to Falcon. That is not good. That is squishy, but he does gain a lot of evade with his passive, and every time someone on the enemy team dies that's not a summoned character, he gains 30% speed bar. So he's going to go quite often, as long as you're killing enemies. He's getting that evade. It's not that bad. His armor is also 109th in the game, which I did not realize how little armor Black Bolt has now. He's been power crept. Like, man, Black Bolt having 109th armor in the game now, oof, that's rough. But this damage stat is huge. Top 10 in terms of damage. I said in my Envoy video that he was gonna have number 1, and that Tana backed it up. Like, we both looked at it and we both said, yeah, he's got number 1 damage. What we forgot was that the ISO bonuses. We forgot to take out the ISO bonuses originally, and like we took out the 20% that he got from tier 2 Striker, which is he gets 20% damage, which is to go up to 2.1 Striker. we forgot to take out the extra ISO bonuses that come with that just by taking it up to level 2. So he's at 2.2, which is a 14% boost to all of his stats. So we had to take that out, and then he unfortunately fell to 8th place in terms of damage, but 8th place in damage, 52,870 at tier 16, level 85, 4 red, 7 yellow. Now, tier 16 is not viable for everybody, but still, like, this kind of, even with this, like, having the 8th best damage in the game, I'll take that. Like, that's very, very good. And that does have his boosted focus, or sorry, it does have his boost from the 30% with his passive added in as well. That was factored in. He gets that 30% boost in damage outside of war, so it's automatically calculated into his passive. In terms of focus, very similar to other characters, like your Ravager Bruiser and Stitcher, with similar focus to Yo-Yo. And then his resistance is similar to Ultron. So, yeah, these guys are going to be interesting. I just like that they're actually going to be usable and that we can actually use them in war. And their stats are nothing to write home about. I mean, you do have some solid ones, like the damage for both Yondu and T'Challa are very impressive. There is not stuff to feel good about, like the resistance and armor and health on some of these characters. Very much a kind of glass cannon. They're not going to be able to take sustained damage. So long, drawn-out fights, you're really not going to win. But here you guys go. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think down below of the Ravager stats. If you guys did find this video helpful, you did enjoy it, make sure that like button, share, and subscribe. And as always, I will see you guys next time.